And good morning. Welcome to Temple of the Infinite podcast here on Temple of the Infinite Radio. And good morning. This is Ralph from Temple of the Infinite Radio, and today we've got a topic that it's actually one that I used to do for the children's Sunday school quite a bit back when I was a minister in a physical brick-and-mortar church. And, oh, wow, did that gig for about 6 years and then decided, I need to move more into a non-sectarian area. But what I always used to love to try to explain to the kids at Sunday school was a little topic that everybody in the church really seemed to be interested in. After all, it was part of our church mission. Where is God? Part of our church mission was to bring people closer to God, bring people closer to Jesus Christ, and, extend his mission here on earth. But, one question that everybody really seemed to be interested in and didn't really fully seem to know the answer to. They knew bits and pieces of the answer, but not the total answer. Where is God? And what I'm going to do in this podcast is just take a little deeper look at that lesson that I used to do for the children's Sunday school and flesh it out a little bit more so that we can get perhaps a deeper understanding of where we might be able to more fully find the God, goddess of my understanding and your understanding. Let's start off by considering a few different views of God. And most people, when they're looking for God, they think, okay, God's got to be outside. He's got to be outside of me. He's got to be in something else that's not inside of me. And people, some of the answers I used to get with the children in Sunday school, where is God? Where can you find God? They would say, oh, God's in the church. God's in the scriptures. God's in other people. And I thought that was good. That was getting a little closer to a deeper truth right there. But when you think about the views that common people have of God, we can kind of break it down and simplify it by just breaking it down into three common categories. The first is something that was explained to me when I was back in seminary, back in the 1970s. The point of view of God the clockmaker. And this is a point of view of God being on the outside. And this is a point of view in which, it's seen that God creates the universe, God creates the world, and then like a person that creates a clock or a watch or a cell phone, he just puts that device down, somebody else picks it up, buys it, takes it away, and then God has no further interest in that device. He's off there creating another person, another world, another universe, and then sets that down, walks away from it, leaves it to be, and then is out there creating. This is just God the clockmaker, a God that is actively creating, but is not interested in his creation, nor is God the clockmaker really interested at all in that creation. He's not a part of it. It's just something that he does and then lays aside, walks away from it. Kind of like, I hate to put it this way, but this is a common point of view that some people of faith have. Is like God is the absent father. The guy that gives birth, or not really gives birth, but conceives the child and then just walks away from it. And so not a very complimentary view of God, but it is kind of a view of God that a lot of people have. And if you have this view of God, then you may be wondering, why should I even try? If God has no interest in me, why should I even try to find God? Why should I try to connect? What interest should I have in a being of that nature? So yeah, that's God the clockmaker. God definitely on the outside. God that is wanting to be on the outside and just has no interest in connecting at all with her creation. Now, a second point of view is a little better, a little more warm, a little more friendly. Actually, a lot more friendly. It's called God the caretaker. And in this point of view, God creates the universe, and then God decides to take care of the universe. God watches over. God kind of, like a parent, God allows the children a certain amount of freedom. God permits free will. And he just sits back and he waits and he watches. And he wants to see what the kids do. Are the kids learning their lessons? Are the kids not learning their lessons? Do they need a nudge in the right direction? When they fall down, is he there to kind of clean the wound and take care of the scraped knee? Yeah, this is God the caretaker. Now, this is a view of God that people would want to connect with, actually. This is a view of God that says, God cares, God builds, God creates, God cares. So, doesn't it make sense to want to seek out this being and actively connect with it? And I am going to be using the word it, I think, referring to the divine throughout the rest of this podcast, because I don't like using the word he, referring to God, because the God of my understanding is both male and female. I don't necessarily like using the word she for the same reason. The God of my understanding is both male and female. I don't really like using the word it, because it is something that we use to refer to inanimate objects and things with no personality, usually. But when I use the word it to refer back to the divine, I'm using it with a capital I. So, let's just use that little those words when referring to God. It with a capital I. But God the caretaker is a view in which God does care about the creation. It creates the creation, and it steps in from time to time to nurture the creation, to kind of tend it, to kind of, give little course corrections along the way. When the children have strayed a little bit too far to one side or another, God the caretaker is there to kind of help bind up the wounds, set things straight, and put people, hopefully, on the right path if they're willing to go. So, that's God the caretaker. Again, a view of God that is seeing God on the outside of us, but more concerned about us. Now, the third view of God, and this is really an oversimplification. There are multiple different views of God. God is infinite being in an infinite universe. And trying to sum the infinite up in just 3 examples is crazy, ludicrous. But I'm wanting to simplify this. We could go on for probably millennia talking about this. But the third view of God that I'm going to talk about is God the building block. And in this view of God, God is not just the clockmaker, the creator. God is not just the caretaker, but God is the very building block of all creation. God is the energy that makes up all of the universe, all of the earth, and all of us. And you can kind of, to kind of illustrate the concept of God, the building block, I'm going to reword the opening lines of the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And so God thought about it for a while, and then God became the heavens, and God became the earth. This is a point of view that actually goes back thousands of years. I first picked up on it when I was studying the Kabbalah, and then I found it further spoken on and talked about in a little book called The Kybalion. But both of these works, both of these schools of thought, really, are thousands of years old. And in these schools of thought, all creation emanates from a common source in one way or another. In the Kabbalah, in what they call the Tree of Life, we see that all things emerge from a common source. And God, in order to create the universe, in order to create the world, He allows its energy to emerge, to emanate from within and coalesce and creates the universe, creates the world, creates all creatures, great and small, creates you, me, and everything over us and under us. And so, from this point of view, God is not just outside. God appears to be on the outside, but God is actually found on the inside. God is the building block that makes up all the universe. And if you want to connect with God, instead of looking on the outside, you can do that. That's a valid way of doing it. But you can begin your journey by looking deeply within and finding the divine within yourself. Now, the Kybalion states it a little similar, in a similar vein. It says that all the universe is made up of energy. And, of course, we've known this since the 1940s with the detonation of the first atomic bombs. We've known that matter is made up of energy, and if you can find a way to release that energy, great things, terrible things can be made to happen, both great and terrible. But what we haven't really been able to really figure out is, what is this energy? What is the source of this energy? What kind of energy is it? We know it's powerful, we know it can be destructive, but the Kybalion seeks to answer that question. And it states that the energy from the divine, that the divine uses to create the universe, the world, you and me, is thought energy. That in order to create, the source, the divine, thinks deeply about it, brings things into being through thought energy, and then using that thought energy, manifests the universe and everything we see around us. So again, another view of God the building block. Also, I guess we can call that God the thinker. A God that is a divine mind that thinks everything into creation, thinks everything into being. And again, everything that is has its being in the divine and cannot really do anything without the divine. It was explained to me once in high school seminary, this point of view, by my spiritual advisor, that God thinks the universe into creation, into being, and then if God were to forget about us, we would simply cease to be. But God never forgets. I guess there's another point of view we could have of the divine. God the elephant, God never forgets. Even though it does seem sometimes that it, the source, the divine, can be aloof, can seem to be far, far away from us. It never forgets about us, and it is intimately connected to us. Closer to us than our jugular vein, closer to us than the blood that courses through our veins, closer to us than anything we could possibly imagine. And yet, so hidden that most people commonly don't see it on a daily basis. It's like this mystery is hidden right under our nose or slightly above it. So now, if we hold the point of view that God is not only on the outside, but God is both, outside of us and within us. And if we focus on that God being within aspect, then how do we find God? Do we just run around saying, hey, look, I'm God, I'm made up of divine energy? Well, yeah, you are made up of divine energy, that would be true. But you by yourself, in your current individualized egoic state, you're not really the infinite. You're not the fully divine God. You are an aspect of God, yes, and the divine can be found within you, but you are not the totality of that divine. But what we can do in order to connect is just to spend a few quiet moments every day, perhaps multiple times a day, in the practice of meditation, and seek out the God within. And if we do that on a regular basis, we will begin to see not just the presence of God within, feel that presence within us, begin to commune with that presence and feel that presence. But we will also, if you're faithful in a practice of meditation on a regular basis, and just, do what feels normal and natural for you, whatever kind of meditation feels good for you to do, you will begin to see not only the divine within you, but the divine within others, the divine within all life and all creatures, and even inanimate objects. Because the great mystery of both the Kabbalah and the Kabbalion is that the one, the awesome source of all, the one that cannot be divided. I won't really say it cannot be divided, because it does. It manifests itself in so many different ways. But we tend to think of the divine as being this one that really is almighty, all-powerful, and all-awesome. And yeah, that's a part of the equation. But in order to create this divine source, gives out portions of itself to the universe that it is creating. And according to the Kabbalah, it imparts a gift from the divine treasury that is located at the core of every human being, every creature, every speck of dust created. And if you are sensitive enough, if you are wise enough to know where to look, you can find it. This gift is the divine energy itself, which rests and is actively a part of the core of everything in existence, both seen and unseen. And if you can develop the sight to be able to find it, to feel it, to see it, then you can make use of this gift from the divine treasury. And it is a gift of incalculable riches. But most people go through life not knowing that that portion of the divine treasury is existing within them. And they overlook it. They fail to see it. They deny its existence. And they never make use of it. And then when they die and they go back to meet the divine source once again, they may very well ask, hey, why did you leave me? Why did you leave me stranded down there? Why did you leave me with no wealth, with no riches, without your presence? And then the divine might say back to the seeker, I was with you all along. I was there. Within you, you had incalculable riches, but you failed to see it. You never realized it. And that is, I think, a good way, another good way to look at where is God and what God is like, because it's almost as if the divine respects our wishes. You know, if we don't want to see it, it won't push its way in. If we don't want to acknowledge its presence, it'll just fade away, disappear, as if, hey, never was here, nothing to see here, folks, just move along. If we have the attitude that we don't want to be a part of God, that we don't think there is any such thing as a divine being, a divine presence, then yeah, it's almost like the old Randy Newman song, I think he's hiding. And he is. It will kind of recede back in behind the stage curtains and just hang out. Keep an eye out, but just hang out. But if we develop the mindset, if we develop the eyes to where we really want to be able to see God and encounter the God of our understanding, then the God of our understanding will manifest itself to us in one form or another, in the best way, according to our own worldview and according to our own limited understanding of the universe. You see, that's why I like to use the term the God of our understanding, or the God of your understanding, because we're all on different levels. We all have different ways of seeing the universe. We all have different ways of thinking of the divine. Some will say there's no such thing, the divine doesn't exist. The divine is it's a fairy tale, like a children's tale. And others will say, okay, yeah, there is a divine mind, there is a divine energy, but it is infinite, it is inapproachable, there's no way that we can connect with it, so why even try? And then others will say, okay, we got God the clockmaker, God the caretaker, and some will even say, okay, we got God the building block here. But God respects those points of view. And, like a child, if you're a brain surgeon wanting to explain what you do for a living, and you're talking to a child in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, you're not really going to be able to go into any great detail explaining yourself. You're going to have to simplify it radically. Now, if you're a brain surgeon and you're talking to some grade school kids, okay, they're going to have a greater depth of understanding. So you can use different terms, use different words, present it to them in words that they are going to be able to understand. And of course, on a college level, you're a brain surgeon, okay, you can, kind of lay it out a little bit more fully. Get a little bit more complicated about what you do and how you do it. And then if you're talking to medical students, then hell, you can use all the sophisticated terminology you want to. We have ways of using different words, different ways of speaking, to be able to communicate with people on different levels of understanding. The divine works on a similar way. We are all on different levels of understanding, and we all come from different cultural backgrounds. We all come from different ethnic backgrounds and different worldviews. And so that's why we have so many different religions through the world. Because the divine, the one source of all, is part of the all, and yet at the same time respects that we see only in part. And so rather than try to give us all the big picture all at once, the divine will just give us little bits and pieces, what we need to know, kind of dumbing it down for the kids and giving us little nuggets. And then hopefully the kids will take those little nuggets of wisdom and gobble them up, become hungry for more, and then seek more out. Others will just take those little bits and pieces of wisdom and say, okay, that's all there is to it. This is what God told us. And then it becomes a religion. And it becomes something like, the one true faith. This is what God told us. It's got to be true. Anything outside of this sphere of knowledge has got to be false. And that's when you get into the fallacy of religions thinking that they know it all, they've seen it all, they've been there, done that. And if you stray outside that religion, you're in dire jeopardy. And, that's why I left the church that I was ministering to some 15 some years ago, is that they tended to have that narrow point of view. And I wanted to, I was beginning to see a bigger part of the bigger picture. And I could no longer be a part of that narrow-minded point of view. But God speaks to all of us. The divine speaks to all of us in different ways. And each way is valid. I like to say it this way: each point of view is equally valid and equally false. Because, we only see in part. We only see part of the picture. And while the part of the picture that we see is true for us, it's not the whole truth. And somebody else out there, seeing it from a different perspective, is going to have a different part of the truth, a different angle on the truth. And finally, those who are deep mystics, who have spent years and years and years meditating on all of this stuff, will be able to see a bigger part of the bigger picture. But we don't really know in totality until we become one with the divine source. And then we become known even as we have been known. Or we know even as we have been known. So, that's the topic for today. Where is God? Well, most people look for God on the outside. They look for God in scriptures. They look for God in churches, mosques, synagogues, holy books, other people, great people. Some people think, in order to experience God, I got to climb the Himalayas and maybe see the Dalai Lama. And most people, so many, fail to realize that God is very close. As Rumi once said, God is closer to you than your jugular vein. He is closer to you than the lifeblood that flows through your veins. And when you begin to see the divine as being a part of you and a part of all creation, then you can begin to see that there is no reason to fear anything in this life. No reason to fear anything whatsoever, because we know who walks with us. We know who lives within us. And I think this is a point that's been partially understood in a variety of different spiritual traditions. But when you approach it from a mystical point of view, and really take the time to fully appreciate and understand this mystery, then you begin to realize, I am a part of the divine. I am a part of the infinite universe. And the infinite universe is a part of me. The infinite source of all is a part of me. So rather than just ignoring it, rather than just denying the mystery, let's appreciate the mystery. Let's work with the mystery. Let's co-create a better world using this mystery. Like Obi-Wan Kenobi once said to Luke Skywalker, may the Force be with you. Another part of the deeper mystery. That's all for today. This is Ralph signing out. I'm going to play a little song here by Ash Gainley, Universe Acceptable. Until later, take care, my friends. And don't forget, look for God on the inside and see if that doesn't aid your search just a little bit. Take care.
questioned life and lost your faith. You needed to believe in something that your eyes had never seen. And now you found that you can't find the answers to the questions that you had in mind. It's like a dial tone, no one's on the line, and now you're feeling so alone. Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Or do you need to see an explanation for the mystery? Trust your heart, it knows the way. In yourself, you need some faith. Don't listen to the crowd. No one's got this whole thing figured out. Listen to the voice inside, the inner self you long denied. The day that you were born, you were given everything you need to carry on. Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Or do you need to see an explanation for the mystery? How many bright suns shine upon the lucky ones who wander? How far have we come? And will we go before we're done? Yeah, the hardest thing it seems to me is letting go of all beliefs. Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Is the universe acceptable in your mind? Or do you need to see an explanation for the mystery?